is Wayne, and a few weeks ago, Pastor Randy asked me to say a few words about July 4th. And like any good politician, I said, yes, of course, any chance to get up in front of people, I'll do it. How long do I have to ensure that we get out here right at noon to eat? So I don't know about you, but high school was the best 6 years of my life. And in that time, I became very familiar with history, not so much on math, but history. So if I did my calculations right, this July 4th, yesterday, we celebrated our country's 239th birthday. We celebrated it with barbecue, fireworks, family, all kinds of other fun. Some of us even got the chance to be in a parade, and some of you here may have seen a parade yesterday. Some of the biggest fireworks displays were probably done right here in Texas because we all know that we do everything bigger and better in Texas. And no one knows how to celebrate freedom better than a Texan, and not to take away from anyone else that's celebrating freedom. When I thought about what to say, I considered just pulling out an old speech from the previous year and repeating it. That would be the easiest thing to do, right? You see, there are certain days like July 4th, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, that all have kind of the same theme. They're identical. And much like being a pastor, after you do maybe so many weddings and funerals, you have kind of a set thing to do. But I'll be honest with you, I got a little frustrated with myself because that's the easy way, if you will. And I've done this a time or two, and you've had the opportunity to hear me speak, and most speeches are pretty standard for days like this. But as I thought about it, I decided that our country and our faith-based history of our country and foundation deserved better than the easy way. It deserves better than the easy way, and I'm sure you would agree with that, right? So I'm doing something slightly different than last year and the previous years and some of the other times you've heard me speak. In order to pull this off, I'll need you to understand two concepts and a little history. And I only have got about 15 minutes to do this to make sure that we get out exactly at noon to eat, so I won't be able to take very long. The two concepts, the first one is the planting of a seed and birth. And I think you'll probably understand this, but one example is when we plant a seed in the ground, we put it under dirt, we cover it up, we give it some water, sometimes fertilizer, sunshine, and then it usually gets some agitation. There's some heat, some friction, people stomp on it, and just think about that for a minute, the agitation. In a specified amount of time, that seed will break through the ground. It is, of course, alive before it breaks through the ground, but when it peeks through the dirt, you see it is then born. After that, it continues to grow. It changes shape and becomes a plant, a tree, fruit, vegetable, vine, or a beautiful flower. Even during those processes, it usually requires some sort of maintenance, maybe trimming, pruning, watering, whatever you need to do to keep bugs off of it, to keep it healthy and alive. When a husband and wife reach the decision to have a child, the seed is planted. It is, of course, alive, but not born yet until the preordained time, usually around 8 months or so. While in the womb, the child is nourished, cared for, and even agitated a little bit on occasion, I'm sure. The birth happens, and similarly to the previous example, the child must be fed, taught, trained, and cared for to keep it alive and healthy. The second concept is that of a testament. A testament, by definition, means several things: a story, an accounting, a contract, agreement, and a testimony. For this purpose, let's use it as a story and an accounting of our history, both as a country and as followers of Christ and Christianity. You see, our country's story seems to parallel the story of our faith. The journey is strikingly similar to me when I looked at it in this context. As you know, our testaments come with an old and a new, an old story and a new story, if you will. And to have a testament, you must have a test, right? We have an old story with our country and our faith, and we have a new story with those as well. So here we go on our historical journey. I'm going to make some parallels here with the Bible and our nation's history. In the Old Testament of the Bible, we have the first book of Genesis. Genesis 14 said, "Then God said, 'Let there be lights in the firmament of heavens to divide the day from night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on earth.' And it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light from the darkness. And God said it was good. So on the evening and the morning were the fourth day." You see, even God celebrated his creation with fireworks. How cool is that? Now the seed was planted in the Old Testament for the foundation of our faith, Christianity. The birth of Christianity had not happened yet, but the seed had been planted. In the Old Testament of our country, the pilgrims sailed across the seas to reach America. The ship named the Mayflower arrived in what was then called New England on November 11, 1620, after a voyage of 66 days. By the way, how many books are there in the Bible? 66. They came seeking religious freedom. They wanted to be able to worship freely and without interference from government control. They didn't want to be told who and how to worship. You see, the birth of a nation, our country, had not happened yet, but the seed had been planted. Now we have to kind of fast forward through history quite a bit to get to where we need to be. Let's just let it suffice to say that over the next few years, decades, centuries of our country's Old Testament and our religion brought plenty of trials, agitations, and indeed tests. So after that time, we reached a period from passing of the old to the new. Much like the Bible and our religion, it was also time for our country to have a new story, a new agreement, and a new path. In the Bible, I think most folks will agree that the New Testament essentially starts with a birth. The birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ. You see, the old needed something new. Things had gotten to a point where there had to be a new contract, a reset of sorts. The things had gotten a little bit out of hand, and we needed to fix that. A way to set things right again, a way to wash away the sin and start anew and fresh. This happened with the birth of Jesus Christ, but it wasn't finished yet. That simply was not enough. There had to be more to get us to where we needed to be in our faith. There had to be a blood sacrifice to seal that agreement. In our country's history, on July 4, 1776, our Christian forefathers, our founding forefathers, decided to write a New Testament for our country. That testament began with the writing and signing of the Declaration of Independence. This established our independence from England and declared our birth as a new nation, one founded on Christian principles and conceived by Christian men, many of whom were pastors, Christians, and just good men. But that was just writing on a piece of paper, not enough to get us to where we needed to be in our country's history. That would require a blood sacrifice. You see, they actually signed their death warrant when they signed the Declaration of Independence, and when they did that, it was punishable by death, by hanging. During those times, the banner of "Don't Tread on Me" would fly across the battlefields, homes, businesses, and churches. In our biblical New Testament, Jesus' life had come to a point that another blood sacrifice had to be made to seal a new contract and give us a new story. The new contract would cleanse us of our sins and allow us to take everlasting life in heaven with him. When Jesus answered Pilate by saying, "I am who you say I am," in response, he signed his own death warrant. And like our forefathers, his death warrant was punishable by hanging on the cross. So they beat him, tortured him, bruised him, and humiliated him. They made him drag the cross to a hill. And on that hill, a different banner was raised on the cross of Jesus. It said, "Jesus, King of the Jews." Jesus died on the cross, but as we know, after 3 days, rose again. Now, at this point, with both stories of our country's history and our faith, we could say, it's done, right? We've gotten to the point where the work was finished. Our country won its independence following the war, and our eternal lives were saved by Christ, ensuring that we would have life everlasting and forgiveness of sins if we chose to believe in him. Both stories could seemingly be over at that point, but they weren't. You see, Jesus came back and spent some time with the disciples before his ascension back into heaven. And in that time, he made it clear that the work was not done. He definitely did not tell his disciples to pull up lawn chairs and sip on Starbucks lattes until he came back for his church. No, just the opposite. You see, that would have been the easy way. But our faith in his sacrifice deserved more than that. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Jesus told his disciples and was very clear when he said, "Go and preach the gospel to all creation." Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like it was done. It doesn't sound like the work was over. It was definitely more to do. Our forefathers left us a living legacy, but that legacy requires us as Christians to be active in our country's future. They left us the Declaration of Independence and then later the Constitution with the amendments and Bill of Rights that spell out our freedoms. But to keep our freedoms and our country's rich religious history and biblical foundations, we must participate. We must show up, stand up, and speak up, and vote our Christian beliefs and values. We have already seen recent outrageous attacks on our families, marriages, our children. We have seen our history and our Christian history of faith gradually become erased from history books and school curriculum. We have fallen backwards as a country, mainly because Christians are good about sitting back on the sidelines and being the well-known silent majority. We have abused the mantra of God puts them up and takes them down as if that means we don't have anything left to do. In fact, it's just the opposite. God does that through you, the church. We have become experts at walking out those doors at noon and neatly putting up our faith until next Sunday, right before church starts. And you see, once again, that's the easy way. But our faith and our country deserve better than the easy way, don't you think? If you look at the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the last book of the Bible, Revelation, you will not find the words, "the end." Not there. That's because the work is not finished. My challenge to you as we celebrate our country's birthday, which we did yesterday, our Christian faith is not to let yourself out those doors and let it be the end. If you do, we will soon have no reason to celebrate July 4th. You see, this is exactly in line with what Pastor Randy has been preaching during the Awaken series over the past several weeks and months. That we must do more as Christians, that when we leave here, we have to go out and preach the gospel to all the world. We must be active in our school and politics and our children. We must go out and do more as Christians. So that's my thoughts on July 4th, and I hope that kind of provides some insight and a challenge to you. I'm not sure about you, but some of the things that I look back and research actually kind of gave me goosebumps because I can see that both of those are parallel. And as you know, there's no coincidence in the Bible. This is all on purpose. So